Boulder trap? More like I'm getting older trap. My back hurts. Fresh and buds now.
Fresh and
All right, folks, welcome back to yet another episode of Fresh and Buds. I'm your host, Tommy Fresh, and you are all my buds. And today I'm very happy to welcome Mike from the YouTube channel Blockout Party. You know him from his Living Legends videos. How you doing, my friend?
Hi, Tommy. I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me on. I'm a longtime listener, so it's pretty fun to be on a podcast that I've listened to for a long time.
Now, the question is, Mike, will you listen to this episode?
That is a good question. I don't know. It'll be listening to it almost for the second time. So
Yeah.
I'll get back to you on that. I don't know how much I would enjoy just hearing myself.
Well, I could say
Again.
that I've never listened to one of these. I'm the worst Fresh and Buds fans. I've never listened to a whole episode. It's hard for me to listen to myself, to be honest. If I could if I could put out a version with somebody else replacing what I ask, I would listen to every single episode. But it's just me. I'm not a big fan of me. But I think that's probably something I need to work on, right, Mike?
Yeah, I listen to enough of my voice when I'm editing my videos, which is just hundreds of hours of my voiceover. So
It's
maybe I've gotten numb to it. Maybe I'll be okay.
Well, listen, I mean, the people don't know the struggles us content creators have to go through in those editing rooms. Not that I have to edit much, but I know that you do. And we actually have some questions about that later in the show. But before we do any of that, we got to get to know you, Mike. And the best way to start is with your journey and where it started with TCGs in particular. And then I want to ask about content creation. So when did TCGs enter your life?
So I have a kind of weird history with TCGs. I was a part of Pokemon Card Mania as like a 6-year-old. Never actually played the game, but we liked the cards. And then that sort of developed into Yu-Gi-Oh!, where we did eventually want to play the game. So we had all the cards. We would play the game, but we did not actually know how to play at all. You know, we were like basically going off the TV show. And I never really, that would be like a lot of like my friends. I have 3 older brothers, 2 of them. We were always playing card games together. And it was looking back, it's kind of amazing to me how like we never really learned to play like Yu-Gi-Oh! And that sort of evolved into Magic. We got into like kitchen table Magic. And again, we were just playing like such surface level games that really were probably not even correct, like according to the rules. We just liked the cards. We like to have our decks that we like internalized and thought were cool, and just like to put the cards on the table and just turn things sideways and go.
Yeah.
You know, I don't even think I really knew what the difference between like a sorcery and an enchantment was.
Yeah, that's
Stuff like that. And like we were young, there were the internet wasn't a super great place to go online and just have someone tell you how the game works. And then I pretty much kind of didn't really play anything through high school. And then Hearthstone was really big while I was at college. So me and my friends would all sit in the dining hall and just play Hearthstone on our phones, and that was pretty fun. But there was a level of frustration that came with Hearthstone.
Yeah.
And after a few years, I like just kind of went cold turkey. And I always say the best decision of my life was just not playing Hearthstone anymore.
You wouldn't be the first to say that. Funny enough.
It was fun. I'm not saying it wasn't fun, but I would get frustrated. I would get mad playing Hearthstone, just getting stomped by the same deck at a certain like rank. I'd be like, I just can't do this. Every game is the same.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did get into Magic a little bit, around, like, that second, or no, it was the third trip back to Ravnica with War of the
Mhm.
Spark and all that. I bought some boxes and, like, played some did some drafts with some friends, and I played a lot of Magic Arena, at that time, but I never wanted to have a physical collection. I was always
Interesting.
very clear on that. I was like, "I don't want to get into the financial rabbit hole that is paper Magic." It's like, I like Magic, Magic's cool, but I don't wanna dive into that. Um,
It's an expensive hobby. I mean, well, so is Flesh and Blood, but I could
yeah.
see the apprehension to that, especially with like the large depth and history of that game. Is like, well, where does it end the collecting? Like, that is the tough thing about getting into something that people have been collecting since the beginning. And it's nice to be with Flesh and Blood from relatively the beginning because you can kind of get in the ground floor if collecting is what you want. But yeah, I totally understand that.
Right, and that was the big thing. I felt like, well, I don't wanna build a modern deck because then I'm playing against people that have been playing Modern for 10 years, you
Hmm.
know? I'm at such a disadvantage. I'm so far behind. Why get into paper Magic now?
Yeah.
Which is, I don't think that's valid. I think that's, um, and it's such an easy thing to get over and is totally overblown in my mind. But, um, my brother basically came to me and was just like, "We're gonna play this TCG," or like, "You're gonna learn this together with me 'cause, um, it's new and it's really good." And I was like, "So it's new, so I'm basically at the same entry point as everyone else right now." He's like, "Yes." I was like, "Okay, I'm sold. Great, let's do it." Um, and that was in, like, 2020. Hold on there. Sorry for the audio only. My cat will be making some guest appearances this episode.
We welcome all guest
Yeah.
appearances from the cats.
Um, and this was sort of coming out of the pandemic, so events were kind of, few and far between. But I remember going to it was just kind of a random sealed event, at a store that we had to drive an hour to. I opened up 6 packs of Welcome to Wraith Unlimited.
Okay. I was about to say, ooh.
And I was like, "I have no idea what any of this means." And people just kinda came over and looked and like, "I think you kind of have a Bravo pool here. So here's your blues, here's your reds, pitch your blues to play your reds." And that was pretty fun. So and then we went to Monarch pre-release, and at that point, I was just, like, consuming as much Flesh and Blood content on YouTube as I could, because events were just sort of coming back into circulation. So I was hooked, and I feel like I was just watching pretty much any amount of content that came out on the game that I could find.
At that point, I mean, I remember I got in a little bit after Monarch release, I guess a month or two before Tales. There wasn't a whole lot of content, right? It was, I mean, were some great content creators and still are making content for it, but it's not like what we have now, where there's a lot of people, even new people, creating content for this game, which is pretty impressive for the game because it is probably the lifeblood. That's how things go for games now. You need to have that community presence. It is kind of funny to hear the journey though, but for you going from the the Yu-Gi-Oh playing with basically vibes, right? This is the
Yeah.
vibe, and it's kind of how the TV show felt too, because I know they were just kind of playing with vibes as well, and then getting to this game, which is like a lot of, really a depth of knowledge, and you were pretty happy that you were getting on the ground floor along with other people. How do you view that decision now, being, gosh, 3+ years removed from that, like almost 4 years removed from that? How do you feel about that decision to jump into Flesh and Blood?
Oh, I feel pretty great about it. I mean, um, I feel like I always need to have one sort of hobby that is a competitive outlet. And for a long time, for like 6 years, it's like 6 or 7 years, I was going to, you Smash Bros tournaments, like
Hmm.
once a week, and that was my competitive outlet. Um, and I basically just kind of swapped that over to Flesh and Blood. I kind of said, I want something a little less stressful. And I've always had the TCG itch. I've
Hmm.
always I've always really enjoyed TCGs and just kind of loved that vibe. Um, but I never really got into one competitively, even just on a local armory level.
Hmm.
I've always so I was really happy to have that sort of Flesh and Blood fill that slot. Um, so yeah, I mean, no regrets. I love going to my weekly armory, and I love going to the like uh, tier 3 events. Like I really look forward to those.
Hmm.
And I know I'm not, making top 8 at any like callings or anything like that, but
Not
just
yet.
I mean, just the thrill of kind of going to an event and saying, I'd really like to go like, 3-2 today, or I mean, kind of long-term goal for me on my competitive journey is just to make day 2 of a calling, which I've never done. It's really hard.
It
It's really
is
hard to
hard.
go to a
Yeah.
calling and go 6-2. That's brutal.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a long
So
day.
I have yet to do that, but I mean, I like to have that um, competitive goal within me, and Flesh and Blood, I think, is like a perfect outlet for it.
Well, I got to say that, yeah, I mean, from what I've heard about the Smash Bros. Tournaments, you probably made a good decision to move that competitive outlet to Flesh and Blood. But I do have to ask, of course, who did you main in Smash Brothers?
Right. So we are talking melee.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I played Sheik and Sheik only.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is not what I was expecting, to be honest. But I'm very happy to hear that. And
Really? Do I give a Fox main vibe to you?
I mean, I just assume like, oh, they're going to tournaments. They're probably Fox or Jigglypuff. I was torn between those two. I was a big Jigglypuff player, not a good one, but it was a lot of fun. But I'm gonna circle back to that question when we get to the fresh fades because I'm very interested to see the similarities between Sheik and whoever your favorite hero is. But we're not gonna get there yet.
Ooh, okay. All right. I'll think about that.
Yeah,
All
well,
right.
I'm.
I'll let
It
that
will be
stew.
very interesting to see the comparison. Now, you mentioned looking for a lot of content when you got into the game, like we all did, and even now, sometimes if I'm like bored at work, I'm like, all right, well, who posted today, or what's the YouTube algorithm going to send me? Um, when did you decide to start creating content, and had you created content for anything else before Flesh and Blood?
So I'd never really created any content for any hobby like Flesh and Blood before. I had done minor like video editing in high school and college. Um, it's not like it's not my job or anything. I always just kind of enjoyed it as a little hobby. I don't remember exactly when I decided I was going to make a channel and start making videos. I think it was about maybe like a year in.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was around like the Everfest meta, around that time where I was really looking for high quality gameplay, and I felt like I wasn't seeing too much of it. Like early Mansant videos had some really good production value, and like Fabrica had some really good production value for like recorded games, not just a phone looking over a table at a loud, crowded local game store. So that was my first vision. I was for the channel was I wanted to record games between um, sort of well-established players, because I think New England is kind of lucky in that we have we have a lot of killers
Mhm.
in like the Massachusetts area. A lot of people that go to tier 3 events and make top 8
Yeah.
come from like Massachusetts and New England, like Noah Bagelman.
Yep.
I've played against Noah countless times, and it's always been a little vindicating to see them go on and make top 8 at Worlds. So I wanted to record games between some really high class players, edit the video down so that there's no fluff between people taking 20 seconds to figure out their blocks, and then get those players on a call and do sort of back and forth commentary, looking back at the game, what they could have done differently, what they were thinking here. Almost a little bit like what Three Floating does with their fight nights.
Mhm.
So that was the original vision, which obviously I did not stick to. But I felt the fab content sphere was lacking in that area. And that's when around like 2021.
Yeah.
So I wanted to help fill that void.
Which, I mean, I think there's always kind of a need for the gameplay stuff, and you could probably speak to this, but like the reality is, it's kind of hard, right? That's like a tough thing to capture, first of all, in like a physical card game, right? And a lot of people do like Talishar stuff and whatnot. And actually, last week, Az and I were talking about the League That Means Nothing and how he likes the emphasis on recording the webcam games, but it is like a lot of work, and that's the toughest thing. Now, you've certainly moved into this video essay style, at least in recent times, which honestly, a lot of people really, really love the video essay style. I mean, it's just something great to put on, and it's also a little bit timeless. It's like it's evergreen in a way. Gorganian Tome is another great example, of great video essay style. What made you want to kind of try that out?
Well, so if you look at the early videos on my channel, you can kind of see an evolution um, of the videos I put out. And I did start out doing that gameplay idea, and that proved to be pretty difficult. And it's not easy to coordinate with other people. Get them on a call, get them to say the things you want them to say, and then edit it down into a nice 20-minute gameplay video. It was just difficult, and it's difficult to capture the footage. You got to show up to the event with your camera, with your tripod, with the laptop, get the charger, press play, make sure no one knocks over the camera. So I just kind of shifted away from that because because it was a huge pain.
Yeah.
I just didn't feel like doing it. And then I kind of I shifted into some other rules explanation videos, which came out pretty well, but that's definitely not like my forte
Mm-hmm.
in any way. I'm not a level 1 judge. Um, I'm not the best person to ask at an armory for if you have a rules question. So I really just kind of said, what would I want to watch? And I think I have a tweet from like many years ago. I'm just like, would anyone want to watch like a summoning salt style video about like characters achieving living legend? Like that sounds like something that should exist.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just kind of said, why don't I just do that? And then it's not something I have to go out and record footage for. It's really just editing me at my desk, combing through old fab content, writing the script, recording it right here. I didn't have to rely on anyone else. I could kind of do it contained, just me here at my desk, which was just my preferred way of working. I don't have to wrangle people together, carry cameras and tripods to events. I didn't want to do any of that. So I experimented with a couple different things, and then I really just settled on the Living Legend video essay style, which are really, those are, the last 3 videos I've put out. You can kind of ignore everything before that.
Yeah, well, we will leave all the carrying of equipment and cameras and mics to Ethan, who seems to do a lot of that these days. But I totally agree. It's very nice to be able to just do all the work right here at the computer. I think these Living Legend videos are awesome for multiple reasons, right? First of all, they're very well done. You do an excellent job with them. But it's also a great way to celebrate these heroes, the game, and also for people to look back, right? Because we right now are on the precipice of the Living Legends format really, really getting its due time, I guess, right? We're going to have the Calling in Chicago next month. And then, depending on how that goes, I'm sure there will be more high-tier events with Living Legend that aren't just Battle Hardens. So it'd be kind of cool for people to be able to go back and look at these different videos. Now, you've done 3, and I'm sure they're a ton of work. But there's other heroes that have hit Living Legend. I do have to ask, do you plan on doing the other heroes?
So right now I'm in a little bit of my hiatus. I finished the Prism video about a month ago now. And so I'm giving myself some time off because
good call.
it is a few months of basically anytime I'm just kind of goofing off, I should be editing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Or I just kind of block off most evenings for video editing. So I would love to keep going and just kind of go in order, do the next hero, which would be Briar.
Okay.
No, I have that wrong. No, it's Oldham.
Oldham.
It is Oldham.
Well, you'll have all 3 Arya heroes to do, so.
Yeah. So, I mean, tentatively, yes, it's in the works. Have I even written the first word of the script? I sure haven't.
All right, we'll edit that out. All right, now say, yeah, it's all written, it's coming. No. No, that is.
I wish.
Yeah, listen, you have a lot going on, and well, we know it's going to come because if you've made 3, I mean, this is just me assuming. If you made 3, you obviously have a passion for it, and the older one will be very interesting to tell because it has a pretty storied kind of journey within its legality in CC. So I will be very interested to see the older one when it comes on your own time, of course. Now, I got to say, do you think that every hero is going to have an interesting story to tell on their path to Living Legends? Because the first 3, very interesting, right? Chain, the first uber powerful deck to ever, grace the competitive scene when the competitive scene started popping off, and then had a lull, and then came back and won a pro tour and, all this cool stuff. And then Starvo, we know what happened with Starvo. It was the speed run. And then Prism, this deck that was kind of a menace with these like really punishing mechanics. And soon to be Oldham as well, with kind of this pretty brutal play pattern with Crown of Seeds. But other heroes, do you think they're going to have as interesting as stories as at least the first 4 or 5 that we've seen?
Yeah, so I definitely think like Oldham, Briar, Lexi all have pretty interesting stories.
Mm-hmm.
But it is something that I constantly think about just very passively as heroes win big events or hit LL. In the back of my head, I'm always kind of thinking, like, was that a good story? Like, what was that? What was that hero's, character arc look like? What did it look like? Because when Briar hit Living Legend, all I could think about was, that's such a cool ending to this character in Classic Constructed.
Yeah.
Like out of nowhere, the Briar fatigue deck, that no one saw coming wins US Nats. That's what it was, right? US Nats,
Yeah,
I think.
Charles Dunn. Yep.
Yeah. She's at 998. You only need 2 more points, and then a completely different version of the deck just catches everyone off guard and pushes her into Living Legend. Like, very cool. Of course, not every hero is going to have that sort of perfect ending.
Sure.
I think about a character like Dromai. Like that was pretty gradual. Like Dromai was around for a while.
And also,
And
I mean, Dromai did have the Pro Tour win that really
right.
pushed her
And that
to the edge, but it wasn't what did it necessarily.
right. So there are going to be some heroes where there's a big chunk that's just them gradually accumulating a moderate amount of living legend points through like ProQuest seasons and Rotonats. So for the immediate next 3 characters, I think it's all pretty interesting, and I can almost let the story speak for itself. But you are right in that I think some later heroes, we're talking way down the line at this point,
Yeah.
many videos in the future where it might take a little bit of finagling on my end to sort of create a more exciting narrative, within the video. So we'll see, but not every hero's journey was sort of created equal. Some of them are going to be much more of a just steady increase over many years.
Yeah. Especially with the WTR heroes and the Arc heroes mostly. It wasn't until Monarch when we saw a relatively fast journey to LL. Although we're still waiting on Levia and Bolton. They'll get there eventually, I think.
Yeah.
Now, the question is, do you look at, this list, right? And do you think that some, might not make it, right? Like, it seems like impossible. You would almost think that, a hero like Rhinar, I think would be perhaps, or Rhino or Bravo, like the 2 heroes from WTR that never really got affected by bans, but have always been somewhat on the teetering edge of relevant every season. Doesn't matter. They could always win an event here and there. Maybe Rhinar more so than Bravo, but do you ever think that you would think they would have LL'd at this point, right? I mean, sure, it's 5 years, but why does it take some of these heroes so long, you think? Is there just not enough points to go around, or they just need to actually be dominant a season or 2 to even catch up?
I think in the first few years of the game, there were a lot of living legend points going to really just the dominant deck.
Mm-hmm.
And when you were that dominant deck, you were Chain, you were Starvo, you were Prism, you got so many points like a ProQuest season. And that was back when ProQuests really just gave, it was 4 or 6 points per win.
Mm-hmm.
And for a while, all the events were CC. It wasn't split half draft, half CC. So every event was CC. Every event is giving 4 or 6 points. There's just a lot of living legend points going around in those early metagames. And maybe Bravo was okay. He was mid tier. Maybe Rhinar was okay. He got some wins, but I mean, when half the points are going to Starvo or half the points are going to Chain, they missed out on the early days of scooping up 300 points in a road to national season. So that era of Flesh and Blood is gone. They didn't really capitalize on it. Here we are in 2024. There's 20 characters. There's, there seems to always be just the better guardian or the better brute. So, they're just gonna cruise at, 15 miles an hour down the highway for God knows how many years. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, we're at
And that's
30 plus
fine.
heroes now too, actually. Not even 20, right? Isn't that
Yeah.
crazy?
hmm And that's fine. No one is going on Twitter or Blue Sky being like, "Oh my God, I'm so sick of dealing with Bravo's showstopper in 2024. He's terrorizing my local meta." No one's playing him. So when he comes back after getting some crazy good support, and then he's a real S tier hero for one season, no one's going to complain about that because it'll feel like a new hero.
Yeah.
So, and that'll make it into the Living Legend video, the Bravo Showstopper Renaissance in 2027 after some crazy expansion slot card.
Well,
So
it might be next year with the Mastery Pack, to be honest. I mean,
that is true. That is true. Guardians could be eaten well soon.
Yeah. Just kind of looking, it's funny. I mean, I didn't even realize how close Bravo was to Living Legend. He's 3/4 of the way there. It's 750, which is actually a lot higher. I thought Akatsu was going to be the highest, but not the case. And then Dorinthia is not doing too bad either. So it's kind of interesting. I will be interested to see who's next. I think it's Dash Inventor Extraordinaire, most likely, based on the points. But Azalea is creeping up there. Now, I do have to ask you, which hero, when they hit LL, will be the one that's like, for you, for Mike, to be like, finally, I've been waiting to tell this story?
So I think that was Icelander.
Okay.
Well, Icelander, or I played Icelander for a long time, and I really liked that deck. And I think Icelander has a really cool story. I really distinctly remember that lull kind of after the Bolander deck won Worlds. I don't remember exactly why, but I felt like the deck kind of disappeared for a while. And then there was that little mini Icelander renaissance where like Ethnic Smoke and Rhea Adams kind of had some interesting builds, and they won some battle, like 3 battle hardens in a row were run by Icelander. And I remember like Rhea Adams saying like, this deck is not actually good, guys. Like this is not well positioned. I don't know how it's doing so well. But I wish I could skip ahead and just do the Icelander video. But as a secondary answer, when Levi hits Living Legend,
Yeah.
I'll stop what I'm doing and I'll work on that one.
Yeah, I mean, that will be the most interesting. I think you got some time on Levi. But yeah, Icelander, chronologically, Briar was after Prism.
So after Prism, it's Oldhim, Briar,
sorry,
Lexi,
and then Icelander.
Icelander.
Okay.
Yes, because Icelander really struggled in the Lexi meta. That was a tough matchup.
Yes, and then Dromai. Right, I'm not missing any.
I think so.
And then soon Riptide. Now, I'll help you on that one if you want. No,
for sure.
I've got some time on Riptide, I think.
Oh, I've got. I remember. There's clips out there of you talking about your like ProQuest winning Riptide deck.
Almost. I didn't win with. I think.
No. Okay.
I rode to Nats top 4. I think I qualified for Nats with Riptide. The best Riptide. No, I'm worried about Frostbite's coming back, to be honest. But it is what it is. We dealt with them before. We'll deal with them again.
We'll see how it all plays out soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I think it's time to do the fresh faves. I want to get your favorites in this game. And I'm actually really interested to see what your answers are here, because you've mentioned a couple heroes, and I don't know if you're throwing me off the scent with a couple of your answers earlier, but who's your favorite hero, Mike?
Favorite hero, it probably is Icelander.
Okay.
Really enjoyed playing that deck for a long time. And I have to go to some Living Legend skirmishes this season. So I'll probably be making Icelander or putting that deck together. I don't know if it's the best Living Legend choice, but it's definitely going to be the one I'm most comfortable on.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to sleeve it up and relive the glory days.
Like
Close number two is Leviah. I've been playing Leviah probably for like the last year.
Okay.
But she did me dirty kind of recently, so so I'm bumping her down one spot on the list.
Well, as someone who played a lot of Leviah,
Right?
I will say that she will from time to time do you dirty, and it doesn't feel good. But you don't get your the satisfaction, or your opponent doesn't get the satisfaction of beating you. You beat yourself.
Yeah,
with the blood
following your sword.
Icelander is a great answer. Now, what would you say is the comparison to Sheik from Super Smash Melee, if there is any?
So I have thought about this before.
Okay.
Yeah. So when you're playing Sheik, you're always losing.
Okay.
I feel like every stock you are getting beaten. You always have more percent than your opponent, it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to you have to stay calm. You're always going to be losing, and you have to win at the end. You have to crack your Storm Striders, throw them off, kick them 3 times, and then hold on to the edge, and then you win the game. And that's kind of Icelander.
Okay.
You are losing the whole game, and that's by design. And then you get them to that magic number, like 10 or 11 or 12. They dump their hand. You look at your hand. You still have Storm Striders. You look at your arsenal, and you say, "Okay, give me 2 minutes. I'm going to see if I can kill you." And then you do it. And when you win, that feels so amazing, because you kind of look at your opponent and you're like, you thought you were gonna win this by a decent margin, but I stayed calm.
Mm-hmm.
And I set everything up for the end, and it was like just barely enough. So that's how you win. That's how you won as Sheik in Melee, and that was how you won as Icelander when she was legal in CC.
That's a great. I never really thought about it like that. Like, as someone who played against Icelanders, I always, because I knew the writing on the wall. Like I understood that it seemed like I could have won at any point, but you just know that they have that. Like, you're just hoping they don't. You're like, I really hope they don't have this thing, and then they did most times, unfortunately. But that is a really cool way to put it. The question now is, and let's see if it matches, what's your favorite weapon?
So my favorite weapon, I think the coolest weapon out there is Surgeon Aethertide.
Okay.
Which I've never actually really gotten to use. I remember when it got revealed, I thought it was really cool, and I like the idea that I don't know if it's canonically true, but like it looks like Icelander's staff from her card art, from her hero art.
That's interesting.
Maybe I don't know if it actually is, but it just looks like a cool actual wizard staff.
Yeah.
And I think it had a cool effect, and I really wanted to make it work. But it was always just inferior to Waning Moon.
Yeah.
So Surgeon Aethertide is probably the coolest weapon that I want to work. But like favorite weapon that I actually get to use probably is Waning Moon.
Okay. I
It
mean,
it is just very satisfying to, use your resource cost perfectly and, shoot Waning Moon pretty consistently.
yeah, the Waning Moon, like even now you're like, oh, maybe I can fit Waning Moon into something, like Ocilio
Right,
or
it's just Wizard,
it's just
right?
Wizard, and
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
it's
just
just
Wizard.
Wizard. Although, I mean, you now have your chance to play Surgeon Aethertide if you want to play Verdance, right? I think that's their go-to weapon these days. Um,
It is. I want that deck to be better than it is, but
yeah.
word on the street is not so great at the moment.
Not so great. What's your favorite equipment?
Favorite equipment. Oh, I should have been more. Hmm. Favorite equipment. Um. Hmm. Ugh, I could just stay on the Icelander train. Oh, I'm forgetting the name. It's the wizard chest that you put counters on.
Alluvian Constellas?
Alluvian Constell? Yeah, Alluvian Constellus?
Well, I mean, I guess
Constellus?
also Final Spring Tunic, you also put counters on.
Yes.
But
That might
yeah.
be my least favorite. I'm notorious for forgetting tunic triggers. So anytime I didn't have to play tunic and it was like against Viserai or a Wizard Mirror and you get to play Alluvian, that was always really fun.
Yeah.
Um the whole game is kind of a battle of how many times can I use Waning Moon for free?
Yeah.
And it was like an additional resource to keep track of.
Mm-hmm.
And I like decks that have a second resource to keep track of, kind of like Leviathan. Your graveyard is another resource that you have to keep track of.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That's
so
it.
that and Husk, I love just giving a CNC a warm hug with my carrion Husk.
I mean, it's close to the namesake of your channel, Blockout Party. I mean, that is a solid blockout, right?
Yes,
With
yes.
the Husk.
The Husk is the most popular party goer at the blockout party.
Yeah.
It's the coolest guy at the party.
Oh yeah, and the strongest. If you ask me, I don't know if anybody's asking, but I love me some Husk. What's your favorite run of the mill card? Card you throw in your deck. You draw it and you're like, this is gonna be cool.
Run of the mill card. I've always liked looking for a scrap.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's an
Yeah,
interesting answer.
I like playing that in limited a lot. I would really value that red looking for a scrap, and I like that it gets played in it gets played in a lot of constructed assassin decks.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm usually on the other end of it. I don't play too much assassin. When I was like, that's such a well designed card that is like pretty strong. It's generic, but it requires a little bit of deck building constraints. You have to, have that one power card in your graveyard. Just like, ooh, good game design on looking for a scrap. It feels great to play it, and that's another thing. You have to. Your graveyard is a resource
Mm-hmm.
if you have looking for a scrap in your deck.
And just that one cost too, you pitch the blue to attack with a dagger into looking for scrap, and you're like, oh, do they have a 0-for-4 after this? And you're just like, I might even have a codex or something. Who knows?
Yeah.
I'm an assassin. That's a great answer. Now, Mike, if you were thrown into the world of Wraith, what class and talent would you be?
I think class is going to be a wizard.
Cool.
I think in any kind of like video game where you have to create a character, I want to be as out of the fighting as removed from the fighting as possible. I want to be on the outside doing ranged attacks.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be the melee brawler in the thick of it. So probably a wizard, potentially a ranger.
Okay.
And then I do want an aria element. I do just think that I love the color of those cards.
Yeah.
Just I want to draw my 4-card hand and have it be full of pretty colors. I do just think a wizard or an archer that has like an affinity to one element
Mm-hmm.
is just never not going to be cool. And I know that's very generic. Ooh, I want to be the fire archer or like the lightning wizard. You know, that's kind of a staple in every fantasy setting. But I think it's a staple for a reason. It's always cool.
Yeah, it is always cool. I mean, you know, you love Icelander, Ice Wizard. I'm playing a silly. I never thought I would play a Lightning Wizard, and here I am. You know, zapping people. I love Acilio. It's very cool. So, yeah.
I think if I could design my ideal character of Wraith, maybe it's Lightning Wizard, but I look more like myself and not like a bunch of floating metal objects.
Yeah.
A humanoid, a human lightning wizard, I think is probably the route I would go if I had to design a character to be in the game.
I think that we will probably get that at some point when we get another lightning wizard.
Yeah. And nothing against Acilio. I think he's cool and fun.
Yeah. But he's something. We don't really know what he is.
I need a face to like gravitate to, you know.
Understandably. Now, we do have listener questions. These come from the Buds Discord. Free to join for anybody. Check it out in the show notes. Well, the first one isn't even a question. This is just a statement. It comes from Pat Shaw, who says, Mike is good, people. And listen, we agree. We agree here.
Thank you, Pat. I know Pat is a local. Pat is a fellow content creator, and Pat is also good people.
I love Pat. And if you want to make Pat happy, just tell him that yellow pitch cards are the best color pitch cards, and he'll love that. Okay.
Maybe I'll see him at my local skirmish.
Maybe. Yeah. Tell him that's what I said. Now, William from the Table Pit on the show a couple weeks ago asks, I mean, you know, they're throwing the heavy hitting questions. How do you do it? I'm guessing in terms of how great your videos are.
I spend probably too much of my free time just consuming fab content. So when I have to go back and comb through old 3-year-old videos, I kind of know exactly what I'm looking for. Because I remember hearing it, God knows when, and I can go back, find the clip I need, put it in the video. And then the other aspect of it is an embarrassing amount of time. An embarrassing amount of time video editing here, right at my desk. So it's just kind of a degenerate fab content consumer. And then I put that to work way too many nights in a row here at my desk.
Well, we will look forward to the next one. And listen, no pressure, Mike. But
I'm
quick.
I'm taking my time off.
No, take your time. And actually, funny enough, next question comes from Dark Prentice, aka Greg, who asked, "What is your favorite trick / shortcut for editing / creating content?" He has 3 questions here. I'll give them to you one at a time. So that one first.
Favorite trick. See, that's the thing. Nothing I really do is really that advanced. I know Greg is a big audio guy, so he is probably far more knowledgeable when it comes to very least the audio side of things. But you can tell in my videos, I'm not doing anything super advanced. I'm like text is just like fading in and out. Things are just moving left to right. Um, do I have any tricks? I don't really think I have any trick. I think, I have a cool little editing like controller
Oh,
that like my brother got me that I really enjoy. So I'm not using a keyboard. It's basically a little custom controller that just kind of um you can map all the different buttons to what you want them to be so I can do all the basic editing, like clip and cut and copy and paste very quickly
that's
with
pretty
this
cool.
cool little controller. It's called the Turbo Box. So just Google that if you're a video editor, and maybe that's a handy little tool. But I started using that, and I could just do all the basic Adobe, Premiere Pro stuff very quickly.
Does sound very helpful. And it's a cool name, Turbo Box.
Yeah, yeah.
Second question from Darth is also, what is the most frustrating aspect of producing Flesh and Blood content?
Frustrating aspect. I've had a couple scares where um in Adobe Premiere, it's so unintuitive. I've used the software for so long, and I still don't fully understand how like different files get saved because you have your timelines, your productions, your libraries. They're all different things,
Yeah.
and sometimes you hit save, you close out, and then a day later you open your file back up, and like your timeline of everything you've been editing is not there. And too many times I've had these little panics about like, I know it's here. I just need to find it somewhere. I just need to open the right type of file in the right place. And I'll be sitting here for 15 minutes and I'll start sweating. Just trying to get my editing software just to put the right thing in front of me again. Um, and I did actually on this last video, I did lose like a couple hours of work.
Oh, God.
And like I have no idea how. Like I swear to God, I hit save. I closed out with full confidence that everything was going to be there when I opened it up the next day. So little things like that. Just I don't know why it's so unintuitive um, on Adobe Premiere just to save things in the right places. So
No, I agree. I use Adobe Premiere Pro, and I'm not editing anything at the scale that you are. And there's still things that will happen. Like I had an issue with the most recent set review, and for whatever reason, it wasn't uploading everything, and I'm like figuring out why. And then, I had to change file type like 3 different times. Like this, it works the same every single time, and then I figured it out eventually, but. Like, why did you change now when I wanted you to do the same thing you always do for me? So it's a very frustrating program that is also very useful. It's one of those things like we just got to stick it out with Premiere Pro.
yeah, I've also had trouble exporting too.
Yeah.
I don't know why. That's always a stressful process.
Yeah. Like you almost like watch it export and you're like, this better work. Right, every single time. And then the last question from Darth Prentice is favorite generic card. Bonus points if it blocks for 2. Although you did already answer a generic card that does block for 2. If you want to reuse it, I won't hold it against you.
No. I should think of a better one. I'll think of one from Rosetta. What is a good generic card from Rosetta? Or you know what? No, I scrap that. I'm going with Erase Face.
Okay, very nice.
I think Erase Face is just a good balance of the 2 for 6 that is relevant enough to come in and out depending on the meta. It's not broken. It's never going to be too expensive. Yeah, it hits that sweet spot of a generic card that everyone can use, but no one's ever going to really complain about or argue that it shouldn't be generic.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's funny. Like
And
it's really good now. Again.
that's right. Yeah. Right now it's it's seeing some play, and it does block for 2. So I get my bonus point.
They will be coming in the mail. Those
Sweet.
bonus points. Now, last question comes from Capolo, who asks, how much time do you put into, I mean, you kind of mentioned this already, but how much time did you put into the Journey to LL videos? And have you considered putting in effort to create videos that might have a broader reach than just Flesh and Blood?
Okay. I really cannot say how many hours go into each video.
Mhm.
I will say that the Starvo video took the longest by far.
Mhm.
And it's almost like I got worse at making the videos when I the second time around, because the scope of that video was way too big. I really had to rein it in. Like,
Mhm.
the initial runtime was so long, and I was kind of inefficient um, with writing the script and editing it down. So I what I ended up on was just like 45 minutes. I'm proud of, and I think came out really well. But for a while, that timeline in Adobe Premiere was like, it was over an hour. It was way too long. So I almost wasted too much time assembling, like, putting all these pieces together and having it be too long, and then taking a ton of time to cut it down. So that one took way too long, and I really feel like I learned my lesson there. In this last one, I was very conscious to not do that. Keep the scope contained. Don't don't create more than you need to, just to cut it down later. And then what was part 2 of
Well, part
the
2
question?
was,
Right.
have you ever considered putting in some effort to create videos that are broader than just Flesh and Blood, that have reach for that?
Um, I really haven't. All I can really think about is, the next living legend hero. Or that's really all I ever have considered. So, if I were to do anything broader reaching, I don't know what it would be. I feel like I feel like historical fab content is the only thing I really have to offer the internet.
I mean, it's a good niche, I will say.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I think you're doing a great job of it. So,
Thank you.
but I don't know. I couldn't even think of something to do. Maybe. Hey, actually, you know what? It'd be funny if you created a video about how to make videos. That's a little inception-y, to be honest. But I mean, you could, in theory, do that. Although I wouldn't recommend it because I think it's more work than you need to do. So that would be my only guess.
Yes, the video on how to make niche video essays about a niche TCG.
Yeah. I mean, they'll be lining up for that one, I think.
Right.
Finally.
Can finally see some money out of this.
Yeah. But that is going to do it for the show. Mike, it's been a lot of fun to have you on, get to know you, have the buds get to know you. Can you please plug everything you'd like to plug? And thank you again.
Sure. Yeah, my YouTube channel is just Blockout Party. Check it out. Definitely take a look at the Living Legend videos. There's the Chain, Starvo, and Prism one. I'd recommend watching them in that order if you haven't seen any of them yet. The Prism one I uploaded last month. So yeah, you can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky. I think I'm just Mike at Blockout Party. Sure, I'm not too hard to find. Yeah, that's those are all my socials. Thank you so much for having me on. Like I said, I'm a long time listener, and
Appreciate it.
it's always cool to see Tommy Fresh at events. I can come up and say hi. So I'm sure I'll see you at the next one soon in person.
I hope so. I hope so. I don't know what the next one I'll be going to is, but do we have
Yeah.
another Hartford coming up?
No, we're always just waiting for the Calling Hartford again because that was awesome.
That was awesome.
That's a short drive for me, and but we're waiting on World's US announcement, which
Boston?
Boston, New Jersey,
Oh,
Charlotte, something like that. East Coast, probably.
Philadelphia wouldn't be too bad either.
No. So
They have a great convention center. Not Valley Forge, Philadelphia. No Valley Forge, please. But yeah, hopefully we get that announcement soon because we were talking about it earlier in the Buds Discord. Where's it going to be? I'm hoping East Coast too.
it's got to be East Coast. Last one was San Jose.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Well, you can all continue to find me on Twitter and Blue Sky at freshbudspod. Check out the Buds Discord. YouTube, give the old like, comment, subscribe, and then Fresh Juice Indie Game Podcast I do with my cousin Matthew. And finally, Mike, I always like to end every episode talking about food. Tell me some food we should be thinking about and hopefully consuming.
Okay, so I did get to go to Osaka this year. So I was at Worlds, just playing in the Calling, and that was sort of paired with my personal vacation with me and my fiance. So when I go to Japan, I don't hold back when it comes to what I eat, and I try and make every meal as memorable as it can be. So a couple foods from Japan that I like to have when I'm there. I like the sea urchin, uni, which you can get in the U.S., but it's always going to be better there. And I had it for the first time a couple years ago. Last time I was in Japan, and I thought it was going to be kind of bouncy, kind of a rubbery texture. It's not. It's very buttery. It's very smooth. So I really like that. I like to have that when I'm in Japan. I also really like inari, the like tofu skin that goes around rice. It's like soaked in like a very sweet and like tangy sauce.
Sounds good.
Like I think that's probably the best item that you can get from a convenience store in Japan is inari. I think those cater themselves best to just like a prepackaged little thing to get on the go. And one last item. I really like the Hakata style ramen where you get the noodles in one bowl and the broth in the other, and you dip it in. I think that is kind of peak ramen.
It all sounds very delicious. And, I wish I was in Osaka because that would have been amazing next time, folks. And unfortunately, I think because that food sounded so good, we don't have time for Charmer, but I'm sure we'll have time for him eventually. Thank you all. Stay